Hey folks, this is John Baugh again, and your topic for the day, or topics for the day rather, or for the week, are standard server controls and validation controls, which are the coverage around chapters 6 and 7. Next week we have midwinter break, so there won't be a lecture uploaded that has to be done, or that you'd be responsible for the materials for until you get out of break. I may or may not record an additional one, but if I record one, it'll be this one. So I may upload it early. It kind of depends on what I've got going on that week. But the week you get back, we will cover Chapter 8, and then you'll get your programming assignment 2, etc. So, all right, so Chapters 6 and 7. Chapter 6 is on standard server controls, and then Chapter 7 is on validation controls. So, Chapter 6 starts discussing some of the basics of the validation control, or the standard server controls. And the server controls that you'll use most are probably the ones listed here. So you'll have things like labels, and it also gives you the corresponding HTML element that you'll need if you want to create them using HTML instead of ASP. And sometimes it's better to make controls with HTML, even though the ASP server controls are rendered as HTML. If you write HTML directly, though, it does cut down on some of the overhead. So when the contents of the controls aren't going to change or be used by ASP, you should probably use the HTML elements instead of server controls. However, when you expect the contents of the controls to change, you should use the server controls, so then it's easy to change the controls by using C# in the code behind file. If you don't know how to code the HTML for the elements you want to use, server controls can also help you get around that. So you could just add the controls to the form, use the properties window to set their attribute, and then let ASP.NET generate the HTML. There's also the list server controls. These are different types of lists as well. So you've got drop-down list, list box, checkbox, and radio button list, and then the bulleted list. All right. Here are some of the events that are associated with various controls. So if your application needs to respond to an event, you have to code a method called an event handler. We've discussed this before for quite a while now, actually. You've seen things like the load event handler and such. So if I look at, we'll look at, I guess, order to start with. Oops, I guess we'll view the code. You'll notice there's the page load event, which occurs when the page loads, correct? So, and then we test to see if it's a post back. If it's not a post back, we know this is the first time that it has been loaded, etc. So that's what page load is good for. For things like buttons, you have the click and the command. These are two events that are triggered whenever you click on a button, whether it's a regular button, image button, link, or link button. It will cause or fire a click and a command event. So if there's something you need to do, two separate things you need to do, or maybe you need to group a few of these on one, then you could use command, and then maybe each one of them does something individually. You could use click. So it just gives you two options. You've got two events that are fired. Right here you'll see the aspx code for a button control. You'll notice the attribute onClick. We say onClick equals, and then you have the name of the event handler. And later in the code behind file, you'll notice that there is a corresponding event handler for that event. So when the user clicks this button on the click event, it will, this is a cancel event here, or a cancel button. So when they click that button, it'll remove cart from the session, so that object that we have in memory. It'll remove cart, and then it will take the user back to the order.aspx page. And since there's no information in the cart, everything will be blank. That's the program we've been working on for quite a while, the cart. So the next thing that we'll look at, the form attributes for setting the focus and the default button. A default focus sets the focus to the control that's identified, and then the default button sets the default button to the button that's identified. So you might think, well, what does that mean? Well, default focus, when you set in the form, when you set the default focus, which I think we'll see in just a second, right here, default focus sets it to text name, txt name. So that means that the insertion point will blink inside of the txt name field, which is happens to be the first field here. And then you've got right here, yeah, the text box right here, txt name. And then you've got the default button, btn submit. So if the user hits the enter key on the keyboard, that button will interpret it as a click and a command. All right. And then there's some other details that I would recommend you look in the book over. One of the other things, let me see here, we go. Checkboxes and radio buttons. The information on the first edition of the ASP.NET 4.5 is on page 200. They show you how to use checkboxes and radio buttons. Notice the difference. You may or may not know the difference. Text is not surprisingly, the text that's associated with the checkbox or radio button. So if you have a set of radio buttons or checkboxes, you might have one that says, it's for ice cream toppings or something. You might have nuts or cherries or caramel or what have you. And then you can check any combination of those. The text that's displayed next to the checkbox is what's in the the text attribute. The check determines whether or not the checkbox or radio button is selected, and the default is false. Group name is when you it's used for radio buttons, not for checkboxes, but if you group a bunch of radio buttons together, which you should, you'll have a group name. All right. Now, a big difference between checkboxes and radio buttons is that checkboxes are not mutually exclusive. That means you can select several of them, one or more of them or none of them, whichever you want. And then radio buttons, on the other hand, are mutually exclusive. So within a particular group, you can only select one. Once you select one of them or another of them, it makes the other ones non-selected. So here's an event associated with the check changing. So as soon as the check changes, if we associated the check new, CHK new, with the, this dumb thing, yep, okay. So if we associate this checkbox CHK new with a check changed event, then when the user checks it or unchecks it, it will set the object customer new product info equal to whatever the value of that checkbox is. So this is ensuring that the customer object gets the correct information. All right. So here's another option. The ASPX code for 2 radio buttons. We've got 2 radio buttons, and notice they both belong to the same group. This is the group name, contact by. So that means these, compared to one another, are mutually exclusive. So the 2 options are Twitter and Facebook. So you can only select one or the other in this case. Now, if the check changes, then you set the customer contact by to Twitter. 2 statements that set a value in a customer object based on the checked radio button. If RDO Twitter is checked, then you set it to Twitter. If RDO Facebook is checked, then you set it to Facebook. The boxes and buttons in a browser might look something like this. These are check boxes, obviously. You could check or uncheck any of them. And then you've got the radio buttons, these 2. So if I clicked on Facebook, it would remove the button from Twitter. Then you've got common image attributes. These are attributes that belong to images. You've got the image URL, alternate text. This is useful especially for people with vision problems or people who are completely blind or have any kind of impairment for vision. The alternate text is important for text readers that read browsers for people who are visually impaired. Since they can't see the image, if it's an image that doesn't have to do with background or just, if it's not just frivolous stuff that is what we would consider visual candy, then people that have vision problems don't need that, obviously. So you provide alternate text only for those things that are pertinent to them understanding the page. So in this case, since it's a bunch of products, they might want to see, or they might want to hear, rather, what the objects are, or what the images are that they're choosing about the product. It might describe them, for example. Maybe the selected product's alternate text might say something like it's, orange and circular and, what have you. And you might think, well, if it's someone who's completely blind, why would they need to have color description and things like that? Well, they can definitely tell shapes by touching them, but the color descriptions might be important if they're purchasing an item for someone else that said, hey, I want the orange one, not the blue one. Well, you're making it more accessible. So this is a big topic in web development. In fact, all government institutions require that the government sites, all these government organizations have they adhere to certain accessibility standards, so it's good to be very, very aware of how to use things like alternate text and accessibility standards. There are also hyperlink attributes. You've got a hyperlink. Code looks like that. They've got the navigate URL, which takes you to a particular location if they click on the link. The text property is what does it actually say, and then the image URL if there's an image associated with it. File upload control is another control that you might need to use at some point. This is when you want people to be able to upload different files. There's the allow multiple attribute, has file, file name, and posted file, as well as the save as method. Now, one attribute you need to be careful with is the allow multiple. The defined description is that if it's true, the user can upload more than one file. But as a note, this is not supported by IE9 and many other browsers, so unless it's absolutely necessary and you know all of your users are going to have updated browsers, then it's probably not a good idea to use this allow multiple. But then you've got things like has file, file name, and posted file. Has file means, all that means is has the user selected a file to upload. So if this is true, then that means the user has selected a file. If it's false, it means they have not. And that's important, before you actually, do communication with the server, or any intense communication with the server especially. You probably want to make sure they have a file to upload. File name is the name of the file to be uploaded, and then posted file. This is the object that represents the file that was posted. So you can use this object's, for example, content length to determine the size of the posted file. So if they're trying to post a gigantic file that you're not allowing them to, say, upload more than 15 megabytes or something like that, you can restrict it using this. This is one way to restrict it. Then you've got save as. This saves the posted file in a specified path. Okay, so this is what a file uploader would look like in a browser. And then when they click on it, first we check to make sure they have a file before we do anything. Then let's say if they're uploading it to a standard Windows machine, it has a C drive, and let's say we want to put them in the uploads folder at the top. We can do that and then concatenate it or append the string file name. So we take whatever the file name of the file is and then put it in the uploads directory. Then you call on the file upload control the save as method, and then save it to that path. And then you tell it, you tell the user that the file was uploaded to whatever path it was, and then tell them what the file size is using content length. And obviously you could do some testing here for the content length and a bunch of other stuff as well. So furthermore, we've got things like the button and the link button and image button controls. These all essentially have a lot of things that are very similar. Buttons, link buttons, and image buttons all have text. If it's an image button only, then it would have the image URL and alternate text, because if it's a link button or a regular button, they both have text on it anyway, so you're not as concerned about alternate text since you already have text. So these are for the image box or image button. Causes validation. If it's true, then page validation occurs when the button is clicked. Command name is an object that's passed to the command event. Remember, when you click on any of these buttons, it fires a click and a command event. So if you wanted to write an event handler for command, you can also use that and pass it extra information using these two. And then the postback URL is the URL of the page that's requested when the user clicks the button. There's an example. Okay. I'll flip through a couple of these. I'll let you do some of this on your own. But list controls are up next. The list controls, you'll notice there's a selection mode that is set here to multiple. The selection mode indicates whether a list box allows one or multiple selections. So in some list boxes you're only allowed to select one item. In others you're allowed to select multiple. Then you have the list items listed, so there's Twitter, Facebook, and text, and then email. So in this one there are 4. If the select mode is multiple, that means the user can select many of these. We'll see that when we do our example a little bit later. If it's set to single, though, they're only allowed to select one. Okay, now you might think, well, how do I select multiple things in a list box? Well, this isn't a drop-down box, it's a list box. So actually, ironically, even though this is the collection editor for the list box, which you can use to edit lists at compile time, this does provide a list box here too. So you can look at this, and I could select any of these. If I select one of them, if it's set to single, I can only select one of them, but if it's set to multiple, I can use the Control or the Shift keys on the keyboard to select multiple items. Control allows me to select items that are not adjacent, and Shift will select items in a particular range. Here are common properties of the list controls. You've got selected item that returns the actual object that is selected. Selected index that gives the index that's selected. If nothing is selected, then the selected index is a -1. Selected value is the value of the selected item, or the value of the first selected item if more than one item is selected in a list box. So if you have the list box set to multiple, up here's the selection mode, then the selected value would be the first one that occurs in the selection. And a common event to all list controls is selected index changed. So if the index changes, then that's the event. Just like clicking a button is the default event for a button, there are more events you can associate with a button, but clicking a button is the default, obviously, and the command event is fired also. But with lists, selected index changed. Just like check changed for radio buttons and check boxes. Everything has kind of a default event associated with it. Alright, here's the aspx code for a drop-down list. Notice it says drop-down list, and then it gives different list items. The drop-down lists are a little bit different. The drop-down lists are actually going to look like a standard drop-down list, so you click and you only have a certain number of items to select. And you can only select one. So to get the selected value, since they are by default a string, and we want to convert it to a day number, notice that we have the values listed here. So it gets the selected value, but notice the values are actually text, but we're going to treat them as numbers in this case, so that's why we call convert.toInt32. You can also call int.parse or int32.parse, and then parse the string that comes in here. There's something similar, almost identical in Visual Basic as well, so if you're using VB, then you should be safe. Code that gets the text for the selected item. If I say string day name equals ddlday.selectedItem.text, it will return the text in that item. Code that uses the selected index changed event. So anytime the selected index changes, maybe we want to convert something to the day number. This one right here is pretty trivial and useless because this local variable will die after this event is called, but it's just showing you that you can pull data in here. Maybe you're storing this later in later code. Who knows? Some common properties of list control are items. Now, items you're going to be using a lot when you add items to the list, because the list control itself contains visual aspects and count of the numbers and methods to add and take away and other things like that. But it contains selected index and selected item. But this is really where a lot of the interaction is going to occur, is with items. So if I have items, this actually acts as a collection or an array of items. So it's a collection of different list item objects. Now the list item collections also have count, and then there's an indexer, which you may know if you've studied C# and some other languages. An indexer just allows you to treat an object as if it were a collection or an array. So in this case, items, you can say item at a particular location and obtain the item at that location. Here are some common methods associated with the list item collection object. You've got add. You can add with a string. If you have a list item that's been pulled from another list, for example, or that you created on the fly, you can just call add on that as well. So these are called overloaded methods because they have the same name but a different signature because they have different parameter lists. Insert, similarly, you have the integer, which is the index to insert it at. If we're not satisfied with just inserting it at the end, we can actually insert it to a particular location. And you have the string and list item that you have options for. Same thing with remove. You can remove, it'll remove the first occurrence that it finds of a particular string, or remove the particular list item that you're looking for. And then you've got a special remove at method, which looks at a particular index and removes the item at that index. And of course clear. Clear will actually take the whole item collection and empty it. Alright, I'll let you look at some of the other code as well. These are checkbox lists and radio button lists. Even though we know how to use radio buttons and checkboxes, ASP.NET also provides checkbox lists and radio button lists that you can use to create lists of checkboxes and, not surprisingly, radio buttons. So again, I'll let you look at some of that code. It's very similar to what you deal with regular old radio buttons and checkboxes, but just realize that it's sometimes more convenient to group them this way rather than standard. Okay. Here's the checkout page. We will spend more time on the checkout page in just a second when we actually look at the project we're going to be working on. And then you've got the head section and the HTML for the page. And then it shows you the aspx. We'll look at it in more detail later, so I'm not going to belabor the issue on that. And they show you the code behind file as well, but we'll see all the code in just a little bit. Other standard server controls you may want to use, just be aware of the calendar, add rotator, wizard, multi-view, view, and panel. So they each have different very specialized purposes. You can look them up on the documentation for ASP.NET, or you could look on page 225 of this first edition of Mirac, ASP.NET 4.5 with C#. But you can find information on these regardless of whether you're even using the book or have the book or not. So just be aware of those. Also, jQuery UI widgets are very, and their plugins are very commonly used. Sometimes the date picker is better than the regular calendar that is offered up here. So you can look at the differences and see which one you like. It would be highly recommended that anyone who is planning on going into any kind of web development, so if you're taking this and you are actually majoring in a web development, it would not be a bad idea for you to either learn on your own or take the course in JavaScript. We're integrating jQuery into it starting in the fall, and I should be teaching that as well online, I believe, in the fall. And it's a CIS 1440, so we're going to do a lot more focus on jQuery there. But if you are a web developer, you should be aware of jQuery. jQuery can save you a ton of time. A lot of the stuff it does, pretty much does, is a lot of client-side cleanup, and it makes things a lot prettier. And it integrates fairly well with Microsoft Visual Studio. So just be aware of those. And then they've got an extra. We're not going to do the extra, but you could do it for extra practice. And upon request, I have code for these as well. All right, so I'm going to take a quick break, and then I'm going to come back, and I suggest you do the same. We're going to work a little bit more on, I guess we'll go through Chapter 7, and then we'll come back and we'll do all the code. So, all right, I'll see you in a bit. All right, folks, now it's time to take a look at Chapter 7. Don't worry, we will come back and do the example from Chapter 6 and then do the example of Chapter 7. So I figured it would just make more sense if we kind of, booked it through some of the material in Chapters 6 and 7, and then we can take a look at the actual examples. So, all right, the validation controls that are provided by ASP.NET are the required field validator. We've seen that before. We also saw the range validator earlier. The others are compare validator, regular expression validator, custom validator, and then this really cool control called the validation summary. Typical code for processing a page that contains validation controls may look something like this. So if page.isValid, if you remember, each validator has an isValid. So basically, you can go through and determine, are these different control inputs valid? And even though each of those has it, the page has it too. So in order for page.isValid to be set to true, all of its controls have to have valid input as well. So here are common validator attributes and properties, just like we went over the common the different server controls. You've got control to validate that associates a validator with a particular control. So you might say, for example, control to validate equals txt input 1 or something like that. Display has to do with the type of display. Then you've got things like text and error message enabled, etc. We've seen most of these things. For the compare validator in the properties window, you could do this in code or in the properties window. There's the operator, which is one of the properties under behavior if you've got a category sorted by category, and then equal, not equal, greater than equal, etc. And then there's a data type check set as well. They kind of take a little bit of a sidestep here, and they discuss the NuGet package. We will look at how we install that. Basically, the NuGet, when you use the validation on the client, when it uses jQuery, there's less JavaScript that has to be generated, and it takes advantage of the jQuery features like cross-browser compatibility. So this has to do with the unobtrusive validation that we talked about before. So when you use unobtrusive validation, that means the client will use jQuery instead of the generated JavaScript. So in order to get it to do that, though, you have to add the NuGet package, which in order to add NuGet, you have to right-click the project, and then you go to Manage NuGet Packages, and then we'll look at that a little bit later as well. So they go how to install it, etc., etc., and then what's generated. You'll notice that they have the scripts generated from jQuery, pulled down from jQuery. It takes advantage of jQuery. jQuery is very, very powerful, so I highly recommend you get familiar with it. There's the required field validator. We've actually already seen this before. When you have a required field validator that basically just determines if there has been data set in the field. One of the attributes that's very important is the initial value. Now, if you put initial value set to this and also in between the data in the text box, what it's going to do, this required field validator associated with this text box, is going to determine if that has changed or not. If this has not changed, then it will know that the user is not entering a valid value. So you might want there to be text displayed in the control so you can indicate to the user what they need to input. However, the initial value causes it so that if they don't change this initial value right here, it will still give an error, okay, indicated by error message. Alright, this is a required field validator that forces an option to be chosen on a list box. So if you can use it on a list box as well. If the initial item is the value's none, even though it says select a credit card, you've probably seen list boxes similar to this where it'll have the top item that's pretty much useless. It'll set the selected to true, so this is the first item showing. The value, though, is set to none. Now, this is not necessarily the value that the user is going to see. In this case, it'll say select a credit card in the list box. But if they have this selected, the actual value that's returned is none. Just like for Visa, it's Visa, MasterCard's MC, American Express is Amex. So the initial value in the validator, required field validator, is set to none. So if they do not change from this select a credit card, if they don't go to Visa, MasterCard, American Express, etc., then this will still flag an error. This is a compare validator that checks for a value greater than 0. So you tell it the data type that you're comparing, operator is greater than, and then the value to compare to is 0. So in this case, they're making sure that you have non-zero positive numbers. So quantity must be greater than 0. And then they give you more examples of comparing the validator, the values of two text boxes. So in this case, they're doing control to validate is txt end date, and then control to compare txt start date. If these two differ, you're going to get an error. The range validator we've seen before. So the range validator we saw a couple chapters ago. We've got minimum value and maximum value, and then the type of data. So for example, type is integer, minimum is 1, maximum value is 14. That means it has to be a number between 1 and 14 inclusive. How to set a range at runtime. When the page loads, you can actually set the minimum value and the maximum value by taking the name of the validator. In this case, it's val arrival. You'll notice that val arrival, and then you take val arrival equals today's date dot toShort date string. That's the type. If the data type of this range validator is date, for example, then it can take short dates. So you say today's value is the minimum value all the way up to 30 days. You convert it today.add days. So this is a pretty cool way to load it at runtime. So if I come back tomorrow, the values will be different. It'll start with today and then be 30 days ahead. Regular expressions are kind of a dark art to a lot of people, but they're actually very, very powerful. Regular expressions are actually used for, it doesn't mean slang or anything like that. Regular expressions are used for pattern matching. Typically, they're used a lot in pattern matching. So there is a list. I'm trying to just see if it's in here. Yeah, they've got it a little bit later, but this, for example, is a validation expression for validating something that is 5 digits exactly. So I would say \d, that is an escape sequence. \d indicates digit, and then you put in curly braces the number of digits. So in this case, we're saying it has to be 5 digits. That's the regular expression. So it matches a pattern. Anything with 5 digits is acceptable. So they've got regular expression editor box. This has some common regular expressions, and this stuff looks really, really complicated in a lot of ways, but it's really, really not that complicated once you learn it. It's like any other language. You just have to learn that backslashes mean escape sequences, just like they do in C# and Java. And then you've got things like question marks. Question marks means the preceding statement occurs 0 or 1 time. And then you've got other things like plus symbol, which is 1 or more, star is 0 or more, it's a wild card, and things like that. So in here, you've got a bunch of digits here. US phone number, you'll see that it's got this parenthesis is actually part of the regular expression and then you've got backslash parentheses. That means that there will be physically a parentheses symbol. Backslash D means 3 digits, so 3 digits surrounded by parentheses, or not if you leave the zip code off. That's why it's 0 or 1 here with the question mark. And then you've got 3 digits and a hyphen, and then you've got the 3 digits and then 4 digits. So 313-555-5555 or 248-777-1212, right? Okay. Here are common regular expression elements. The common elements are actually listed on page 247, but you can easily find all kinds of information on how to form regular expressions. Ordinary characters, or any ordinary characters, backslash is matching any character that follows. If it's backslash D, matches any decimal. This is off by a little bit. So you've got this slash lowercase d matches any decimal 0 through 9. You've also got the backslash D here, capital D, that matches any character other than a decimal digit. So basically by capitalizing these, you're making the opposite. Backslash W means any word character, lowercase or uppercase, A through Z, and any digit. If you do the uppercase, it means any non-word character, etc. Right? S is white space. If you use this ABCD here, that matches any character included in the brackets. If you put the caret symbol in here, that means not, actually, in a lot of different like predicate calculus and things like that. This can indicate not in logical operators and stuff. So that means anything that any characters that do not include what's included in the brackets. So this would be in any character that's not A, B, C, or D. Then you've got A through Z, that matches any character in the range, because you're using a hyphen in the range with the brackets. Brackets are special symbols. Curly brace N matches exactly n occurrences of the preceding element. N comma means n or more. Then N through M, it's at least N but no more than M. Star is 0 or more. Question mark is 0 or 1 actually. Plus is 1 or more. This bar here actually, it's the definition is that it matches any of the elements separated by the vertical bar, but you can think of it as or. Just like in a programming language, you've got or. In C# it's the double. We use the double to indicate a standard logical OR. And then you've got parentheses that groups elements that appear between the parentheses. And then they give you a few different examples. So if you put backslash D and then in curly braces a 3, that means this is 3 digits, any 3 digits. This right here, between 8 and no more than 20 characters, it's a W. That means any lowercase, uppercase, numbers, anything. So Frankenstein would fall into that. And then they give you a more complicated pattern. 2 digits, a hyphen. Backslash D4 means you have 2 digits, hyphen, followed by 4 digits. So this would match that pattern. Then you've got some value between 1 and 8 characters. Dot is just a literal. Backslash W 1 to 3, that means 1 to 3 characters. So Freddy.jpg, that would be one example. Google.com, that would be another example. This means if you have AB or SB, that means it has to start with AB or SB hyphen. So this one's SB hyphen, then between 1 and 5 digits. So 3276 does match that. And then you've got 5 digits, and then optionally, that's what this grouping right here, you've got hyphen and then 4 digits. This is optional, so they could just put 5 digits. So for example, a zip code is a good example of this. 5 digits and then optionally the extension code here. So backslash W star means 0 or more letters here, and then a digit in the center, and then 0 more letters at the end. So this could just be a digit, because if it's 0 more, these two right here don't have to be there, but we're guaranteeing there has to be at least a digit. You don't have to have any at the end, don't have to have any at the beginning, but it has to have a digit in the center, or at the beginning if this is 0, or at the end if this is none as well. Okay, etc. There's tons and tons of examples of regular expressions, but they're very, very powerful, so I would highly recommend becoming familiar with them. There's something called a validation summary control. The validation summary control, there's also the custom validator. I'll let you look the information up on that as well. That has to do with if you have to customize the code about what defines it being valid or not. So they do make that easier for you. But the validation summary control lets you summarize all the errors on the page in one area. So for example, you've probably seen it before, even though you may have a bunch of text boxes and maybe a few of them are missing, you want to summarize all of the options at the top, all of the things that the user forgot, so they can look at it immediately and see, oh, I missed that, that, and that. So that can be very useful. And they give you some examples. Here's a good visual example here. So you've got email and then must match first entry. They can say, please correct these entries, and then first email address, second email address. So okay, got the checkout page. We'll look at the code in that in just a second. That's pretty straightforward, and then they give you an exercise at the end. All right, so I'm going to take a quick break. I suggest you do too, and we will come back and we'll look at all the code for the two sections or two chapters that we've covered. All right. All right, folks, this is the EX06 cart website. I've uploaded as a zip file this and also EX07 cart websites, which is essentially, this will be the next one is kind of a continuation of this, minus some details. The first thing you would want to do when you first open this is make sure you right-click this and say you want to use IIS. So currently you'll see that I've already done this because the option says use development server. Secondly, you want to set the order page as the startup page by right-clicking it and going to set startup page, set as startup page. We're going to review the order and cart pages to see that they're kind of like the ones we saw in chapter 4. Let's test the application just to look at it for now. Alright, so you've got our Austin Powers product at the beginning. I'm going to add a couple items to the cart. Alright, so the cart still works, that's good. Haven't broke anything yet. We could be really good at that as software developers, is adding new bugs. But we're going to click checkout, and this will give us the ability to enter checkout information. So this is checkout page 1. We can enter contact information and billing information, and also tell them, hey, you can tell me about all these new products and contact me by one of these options, right? So if I click checkout, you'll notice it'll immediately give me errors because I haven't entered any of the information. These are caused by validation controls, not surprising. So you see that all the text boxes and the drop-down lists have required field validators. So we can enter valid data for all these fields just to see what it looks like once we do that. Let's say it's jpbot.oaklandcc.edu, jpbot.oaklandcc.edu, and first name, last name, 555-555-1212, and then address would be 1313 Mockingbird Lane in Los Angeles, California, 90101. And then just say checkout. It'll take you to the next page. And this right here is the data in the session table state on the checkout page. Obviously, this is not a very user-friendly checkout page because it says things like data in session state and things like that, but it does give us as developers some information about what's going on. So you'll see that it is echoing the information back to us, the billing address, the contact me, and tells you true or false based on the choices I made in the radio buttons. Notice it is mutually exclusive in this case. It's only letting them contact me by Twitter. So hopefully we don't get into an argument and blow up the Twitter feed. You'll notice that I also gave them the options of letting me know about certain products and things like that as well. Then you can click Continue Shopping. So then I'm going to close the browser, and I'm back in Visual Studio here. We're going to review the code in the customer.cs file. Customer.cs is under app code. If I open that up, you'll see that it's basically this is our data transfer object. It just has a bunch of fields here. It's got first name, last name, email address, phone, address, city, state, zip, etc., new product info, etc., and then the contact via. These are all contact via, that's a string, but we'll also make use of contact via Twitter, Facebook, text, and email as well. Now we're going to look at the code behind file for the checkout page. Let me find it here. Checkout page here. There's our checkout page. We're going to go to the code behind file by going to View Code. There's our code behind file for the checkout page. We can see how the entries are stored in the customer object and how the customer object is stored in the session object. So it goes back and forth depending. So here we see in load customer data, that you'll notice is called when we load the page, and then we have get customer data called if we call checkout. So load customer data is called if this is not an initial load. In other words, not is postback. If this is the initial load, we load the customer data. As long as the customer object is not null, you'll notice we've obtained the customer object by getting the data out of the session state. If it is not null, then what we do is we set the various controls equal to their corresponding data inside of the customer object. So you've got, for example, customer.firstname and customer.lastname, etc. If we go back to the code of customer, you'll see that we've got the first name, last name, phone, etc. Right? So again, that's our data transfer object. So load pulls the data out of the data transfer object and stores it in the controls. Get customer data does the opposite. It takes the data out of the controls and puts them in the customer object. All right. So now we'll look at checkout 2. I'm going to view the code behind file for that as well. For this, it's pretty straightforward. It's basically just echoing the information back to me. But you notice it's getting the data from this customer object. Now they named it customer because even though it's got the same name as the one in checkout, it is not the same object. Or it's the same object, but it's not the same reference variable. Notice this one is in checkout 2 class, and the other one's only in the checkout class. So these are scoped to the class, but when it pulls the session object out of memory, the first thing we do after we get it out of memory is we cast it to a customer object and then store it in customer. Then I get the various data out of the customer with some spacing to make it look pretty decent, and then I set the textData.text equal to this full message. Notice I'm using \n. \n, if you've probably taken Java, I would hope so. The \n is basically means new line, right? So in Visual Basic it would be the and VBCRLF. So so once we're done reviewing all this stuff, we're going to actually start making some changes. So in the aspx code for the checkout page, so I'm going to close a couple of these just to get a fresh start here. All right, close that one over here too. For the initial checkout page, the aspx code here, I'm going to comment out the code for the radio button list, and we're going to convert it to a list box. So when if I find the radio button here, radio button list for the contact me via. Okay, please contact me via. Okay, I'm going to break it out here a little bit so you can see it a little bit better here. Here's my radio button list right here. I want to comment it out. Now, the easiest way to do this in Visual Studio is to hold down the control key, and then continually while you're holding on the control key, just tap the K once, and then tap the C. If I wanted to uncomment it, I'd control K, Control U. So Control K, Control C comments it, And you don't have to hold all three down. You just hold down Control, tap the K, then tap the C. So I've commented out this radio button list. Now we're going to use the collection editor. After we add a list box, we're going to add it above the commented code here. So I'm going to go into the toolbox here and add a list. Oops. Into standard toolbar, I'm going to add a list box right here. I'm going to name it list contact via, so the ID will be LST contact via. All right, I'm going to go switch to design view just to show you we can do stuff in here too. This is the where is it? There we go. Here's the list right here, list contact via. And we're going to use the collection editor by clicking this little mark here and then going to edit items. Brings up the collection editor. I'm going to add different members to this. So the first one, I'm going to set its, let me see, was it Twitter? Okay, Twitter. And then when you hit tab, it automatically sets the value as well. And then I'm going to make the second one Facebook, trying to keep these consistent. Add another text message. And then one more is email. Okay, no hyphen. All right, so then I hit OK. It'll add the items, and voila, we've got our items in there. We want to set the selection mode to multiple. So I'm going to go over in the properties window. I have it alphabetical, but some people might prefer it in category. I'm going to set the selection mode right here. It's currently on single. I want to set it to multiple so that the user can select more than one item. And then for formatting, I'm going to save that and then go to the source here. It says that we should put one BR element after the inline text and two after the list box. So there's already one after the inline text, and then we'll put two after the inbox. So I'm going to put, or the list box. So BR slash, BR slashes. So there we go. We'll get enough enough text there. Then we're going to run the page. So we're going to try to run the page, but we'll note there may be a problem here. Notice it's got build errors. Well, that could be a problem. I'm going to click no on that. So to fix this, we have to comment out the lines in the code behind files that the message code behind file that the message refers to. So I'm going to double click on the errors and then just comment them out. Take these, Control K, Control C, and that should get rid of all the errors. So then I'm going to run it, see if it gives me any problems. All right. So I'm going to test the page. I'm going to hit 2, add that to the cart, go to checkout. Now notice now that I don't have radio buttons here, I can hold down Control, and it will actually allow me to select multiple items. All right, pretty nifty. Now you'll notice when I'm back in Visual Studio that one of the problems is that we have to go to the checkout page here in the code behind file. We've got get customer data, and we've also got load customer data. These two are both important, but we need to make these actually take advantage of the list box we added, because currently we are not storing information in the customer object or retrieving information from the customer object for the values that we just commented out for the radio button. So since we don't have a radio button, we're going to use the list. So for load, or for get customer data, I'm going to go to the end here, and I'm going to say customer dot contact via Twitter equals the contact list, the contact via list dot items at 0, because we know the first one has to do with Twitter, and then whether it's selected or not, that returns true or false. Then customer dot contact via Facebook equals list contact via dot items at 1 dot selected. Customer dot contact via text message or via text equals list contact via at the items 2 dot selected. Alrighty. And then finally we've got email. So I'm going to do that. Customer dot contact via email. It's the only one left right now. List contact via items at 3 dot selected, whether it's selected or not. Okay, so that's for the get customer data. We're going to also modify the load customer data. So I'm going to go back up here and we're going to add some code. So for loading it, we're taking the list contact via dot items at 0 dot selected is equal to the customer object dot contact via. See, the first one is Twitter, right? That's that value directly. LST contact via dot items at 1 dot selected equals customer dot contact via. Second one's Facebook, and then LST contact via items at 2 dot selected equals customer dot contact via text. Text. And then contact via items 3 dot selected customer dot contact via text, Facebook, email. Alrighty, so that should be decent. We're going to now attribute for email. Include email. Oh, that's fine. Okay, so I'm going to run this now, and we will see if this works the way we expect. I'm going to add 3 here, add to cart, and then checkout. Here's where the magic occurs. If I click checkout now, it'll tell me all these errors. So I want to say jpbod oakland cc.edu, jpbod oakland cc.edu, John Baugh, and it's 248 555. Address is 1313 Mockingbird Lane in Los Angeles, California, 90101. Okay. So the magic here, the thing that we changed, primarily focuses on this list box here. So I'm going to hover over here and do a control click on Twitter and text message, and then click checkout. And you'll notice inside here, now the contact me via is allowing us to select multiple items. You've got Twitter is true, Facebook I didn't want to be contacted by, text message is yes, and email is false. So there we go. Everything's pretty beautiful. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to look at the code for, or we're going to start from, not really from scratch, but I'm going to close this solution, save it, and we're going to look at the code from exercise 7. I'm going to take a quick break, so should you, and we will look at exercise 7, which starts with the EX07 cart. I'll open that in just a second. You'll see how we can open it from the zip file after the zip file has been extracted. So take a quick break and we'll be back. Alright folks, now we're going to start on the EX07 cart that I uploaded. So I'm going to go to File, Open Website, and once you go there, you're going to find the wherever you unzipped the EX07 cart to. Notice one thing though, just as a note, the actual way the zip file worked, it actually had EX07 at the top and then another subdirectory named EX07 at the bottom. I just cut that one and then pasted it in the upper directory, or the directory above it, so that it replaced it. So now this is actually the top level directory of the app code and app data and all my files. So make sure you're using that one. Hit open, give it a few seconds, and then under solution you'll notice I can see a file path here. So that means I need to right click and tell it to use IIS Express, and then agree to that. Alright, so once I've got that, I need to run it and see what it looks like for now. And there should be an error. Yep. So it'll say, oh crap, what's forbidden? There's no default document configured for the requested URL. So what do you think that means? If you think about it for a second, you probably would notice that we have not set order as the default page. So I'm going to right click it, go to set as start page. Notice this EX07 is obviously not the exact same website that we were just working on, so that's why we have to do a lot of this stuff over again. And that is by design. I want you to keep practicing it and make sure you're comfortable with doing that if you need to. Alright, so we can test the application if we need to. Go to Internet Explorer. Should get the Austin Powers showing up again. I'm going to actually change it to something else. We'll have Superman. We gotta love Superman. It'll need at least 3 of those costumes. Okay, so hit add, and then go to checkout, and then you will see all the information here. If I try to check out now, it's going to give you the validation control summary at the top, and then it will give you the validation control stuff down here as well. So if I click on the checkbox, you'll notice that once I do that, it resets, and then I can't interact with these anymore. And then if I click checkout, you'll notice there are no errors next to the shipping address, and this list is actually shorter. That's because it's not considering the shipping address anymore, because these are disabled controls. If I uncheck it and then click checkout again, it'll bring all the information up again, all the errors. So I can enter valid information in all of these. Ultimately, I could try bad ones. If I hit tab, notice it says must be a valid email address. So I probably should put a valid email address in there. I hit tab there. oaklandcc.edu. First name is John, tab, tab. Notice these are all disappearing. 555-555-1212. For now, address 1313 Mockingbird Lane, and it's Los Angeles, California, 90101. And then when I click checkout, it'll take me, oh, it's telling me that, so I should check same as billing address and then click checkout, and it'll give me the information. The shipping address stuff is empty, but if they have that checkbox checked, we can very easily check it, and then if they do that, we can just replicate this information if necessary. Okay, continue shopping. Now I'm going to close this and then go back into Visual Studio. I'm going to look at web.config. And you'll notice that this actually has set the unobtrusive validation mode set to none. Okay, so this is actually has turned off unobtrusive validation mode. We can delete the element that turns it off, or the elements that turn it off. That's these app settings right here. I'm going to delete that and hit save. So now that we've turned unobtrusive validation off, it should try to use jQuery to do the validation. Remember, it reduces the JavaScript footprint, and it's actually, it's time-tested good code, so it has to generate less code and transfer it less code. If I try to run it, though, you'll notice I'm going to get an error. So it'll tell me unobtrusive validation mode requires a script resource mapping for jQuery. Please add a script resource mapping named jQuery. And you might think, okay, well, this looks like a complete disaster. I don't know how to fix it. You could look it up on the internet or just do what they tell you in the book. Basically what this means is that we need to add the script resource mapping for jQuery. We need to install the NuGet package. We're going to, as a reference, it's page 237. We looked at it earlier when we looked at the slides, if you recall. We will right-click the project name and go to Manage NuGet Packages. So Manage NuGet, unable to locate the solution directory. Oh, got to save the solution first. Wait a minute. Okay, I got to hit Save All and then tell it to save the solution. Then I can right-click and go to Manage NuGet Packages. And if I look online here under NuGet Official Packages, and then in the search, I'm going to put aspnet.scriptmanager.jQuery. All right, and then even without hitting enter, it should update the search. There's the scriptmanager.jQuery right there. Make sure it's the right one, asp.net or aspnet.scriptmanager.jQuery. I'm going to click install. Give it a few seconds. And you'll notice it's creating the jQuery files and then putting them in the scripts folder here, and added a few more folders. Then I can hit close. Now when I run it, I no longer get the error, right? Okay, so once we've done that, we're going to add validators to the web form. So for the phone number, I've got to look at the checkout.aspx right here. If I look for the phone number, which is a little bit farther down here. It would make it easier if I just probably search for it. Let's do that. Phone. There we go. There's our friend, the phone number. There's a lot of code in here, so sometimes takes a while to dig through. You're going to be using Control F a lot in your career, especially if you have a ton of code to sift through. That's why they build it in. So it even has the error set here for the regular expression validator to use that particular format. We're going to add an initial value to the phone number field to show that the format for the phone number entry, and then we're going to add an initial value attribute to the required field validator. So for this particular text box, in between the here I'll enter that. Okay, in between the tags for the text box, I'm actually going to put the initial value here, 999-999-9999, and then for the initial value attribute. For the required field validator, there's already one. It looks like they already added that for us, so if you do not see it, I think that's probably a mistake on their part. But you can add this 999-999-9999. That'll be the initial value there, and if you don't change it between the two, it'll flag an error. Then we can test that change to see how it works. So I'm going to delete the extra space here just for a second, and I'm going to run it and see if I can get it to work. Add to cart, checkout. Now if I hit checkout, you'll notice under the phone number it'll give me the value that's default. If I don't change it, even though there's a value there, if I don't change it, it still says, hey, that's required. So if I put 555, it's going to say use that format. I'll say okay, 555, 555, 1212, hit checkout, and then notice that that error goes away because this is finally in the valid format. And you got a clear option there. Okay. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to add a regular expression validator for the billing zip code. All right, so there's the billing address, billing city, state, zip code. Here's the zip code. There's already a required field validator attached to it. I'm going to hit enter just to give myself a little more space, and I'm going to go under the validation controls, and I'm going to look for the regular expression validator, and I'm going to drag it in here and maybe tab it in so it sits kind of on its own. For the ID, usually it's good to rename them something useful, so I'll just call it REV for regular expression validator, zip, billing zip. All right, because this is all under the billing address. And once we do that, we want the billing zip to take a form of either 5 digits, 999999, or 999999 hyphen, and then the 4 extra digits, 9999. So the validator message should be use the format, and then we should tell it that. So validator message should be something like that. So I could put it actually there, but I'll put it here. Use the format 99999 or 99999 hyphen 9999. So 5 digits alone, like 48140, or 4 digits hyphen then the additional information for the zip code. So to test this, make sure both formats are accepted as valid input. So we have to think, well, what kind of regular expression do I need? The regular expression stuff is on page 245 through 247. So we could look there and find out, well, what kind of regular expression do we need? And we know that we have 5 digits, and then optionally, 4 digits, a hyphen, and then 4 digits. So for the regular expression validator, we have to have the actual regular expression. So in this case, for this validator, you want to have validation expression attribute. So I'm going to actually hit enter a couple times here, just to make it prettier. Alright, so I'm going to put validation expression. Okay, so inside of these parentheses, I want to put D and then curly brackets 5. Okay, so /D, sorry, \D, because that tells me I want 5 digits. And then I'm going to use parentheses here. I'm going to put minus \D control, or not control, but curly braces 4. In parentheses, and then a question mark. Now you might think, well, what are the parentheses for? Well, these are not going to literally be printed out because they're used to group code together in a regular expression. So to group irregular expressions together. So I'm saying this is actually applied to with the question mark. So what does the question mark mean? It means 0 or 1 occurrence. So that means I'm going to have 5 digits regardless. This statement is affected by the question mark. So the question mark says 0 or 1. If there's 0 here, then if there's nothing here, that means that I'm going to have 5 digits regardless. If this is 1, that means I'm going to have a hyphen. /D4 means 4 digits. So that's 5 digits and 4 digits. Alright, so that's pretty cool. I'm going to save that. Then I'm going to add a date of birth field after the phone number field. So let me see here. I'm going to find the phone number field right here. There's phone number field before the address here. We've got a label that says, okay, we'll just add a regular label because they don't need to interact with it. So you'll notice they're using a regular old HTML label. They're not using an ASP label. So for this one, we're going to say date of birth or something similar. And then I'm going to have a text box. So if I go to solution, the toolbox. Sorry, 1 second. Okay, right here. If I go to the toolbox, go under standard, I'm going to drag a text box over there for date of birth. And you could use a calendar and a bunch of other stuff, but we're going to keep it fairly easy right now. I'm going to change the ID to txtdob for date of birth. You want to set the text boxes. We also have to set the CSS. If you'll notice the other text boxes, you can always look at the other ones and see if it makes sense here. You've got CSS class equals entry. So I want to make sure that's the case also with this one. So CSS class is entry. Any other things? Nope, not really. I want to set the data in here as mm/dd/yyyy. We don't need a required field validator because we're just going to, we'll make this optional, but we do want to add a regular expression operator. So if they do add something, we want to make sure that it's in the right format. So we're going to add a regular expression validator. So let me see here. Under validation, regular expression, I'm going to put that down here. Maybe tab it in so it looks like it belongs to this. We'll call it REVDOB. So regular expression validator for the date of birth text box. You also have to put the control to validate. Okay, so I need to associate them. So control to validate equals txtdob. Alright, that's good. I hit enter here, and Hit enter there. Make a little more organization here. All right. So we can clearly see what's going on here. The error message should say something like needs to be in form mm/dd/yyyy. Okay. All right. So this regular expression validator should be added associated with this field, and it should test to make sure the data in this is in the format month, month, day, day, year, 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 year. The initial value for the text field, we could put it right in there. You could also do this initial, not initial value, sorry, it's text equals mm/dd/yyyy. That should be fine as well. In fact, in that case, we don't really need the text between it, so we'll just put that there. One or the other. Once we do that, we have to provide the appropriate messages for the validation semi-control. Make sure we're doing this. Yep, error message is there. And then for the validation expression, this is our regular expression that goes in between here. We have to decide, well, what should a date of birth look like? Well, they've got the 0 or 1 here, so that's optional. You can put a 0 or 1 because that is the month, so the month is never going to have a number greater than a 1 in the first digit. Then you put a single digit, \d. Then there's a \/. You might think, well, what the crap is that? Backslash is an escape character. So the \/ says literally I want to put a / there. So then you put a range 0 through 3, right? Because that's the, could be the day could start with a 0, it could start with a 2, or it could start with a 3, depending. So you got that. Then \d, one other digit, \/. So this is getting ready for the year. So what does a year look like? Well, \d and then 4 digits. Now, this isn't perfect. It's not checking for leap years. It's not doing things like that. That gets a lot more complicated. But it is going to check the date format to make sure it's legitimate. They could say they're born in the year 20,000 BC, or not really, but they could put 2000, or the year 1000, or the year 5, or whatever they want, but this should work. Then we want to save it, make sure we're saving it, and we're going to modify the customer class in the 2 code behind files so that we actually are obtaining and setting the data appropriately for the birth date. Okay, so first things first, I'm going to go to Solution Explorer and go to the app code, and in the customer file in the app code folder, there's nothing currently for birth date. Okay, so since we put date of birth right after the phone field, let's do the same thing here. Public string birth date, and then we'll auto implement it with the get and set. All right, that's good. And the property is just going to be a string to keep it simple. We don't need to make it a date type. I'm going to close that for now. Then we're going to open the code behind file for the checkout page. So I'm going to go to the checkout page, go to View Code. So this shows the code behind file for the checkout page. And we're going to modify the code so the birth date or entry is added to the customer object. And then we have to make sure it's also loaded. So inside of, I don't know if they mentioned that, but you definitely need to do it. So you need to modify load and get. So the load customer data, we need to put the data, get the data from the customer object if any exists, and store it in the appropriate text box. So again, it's after the phone, so it doesn't really matter what order you put it in here, but we'll just keep consistency here. So txtdob.text equals customer.birthdate, right? So that's the only thing we really need to do in load. In get, we can go down here, and again, after the phone, I'm going to put customer.birthdate equals txtdob.text. and we're good for that. And then let's run this. Well, let me actually just double check on some code first. I always got to look out for it, make sure the code looks right. Okay. Modify the code so the birthday. Oh, I guess that's another thing we have to do too. In checkout 2, I'm going to go to the code behind file and checkout 2, and we want to add that information up here as well. So I'm going to put the birth date right here. Birth date. So customer.birthdate. Okay. \n plus, right? So that's all you're doing to add the field. You can observe the how the text is fitting in there. But I do want to go back to the checkout just to double check some things. I'm going to make sure that the date of birth regular expression has a field added to it. Let me see here. Where was it? Right after the phone number, right? Okay, date of birth. This text box has the CSS class entry. The regular expression should also have a CSS class set equals validator. Okay. And we also want to set the display equal to dynamic. That's another thing. That's little. Okay, where we go? There it is. We've noticed that keeps it in line and lets it expand and contract as needed. Let's see if this works. If it doesn't look right, we'll just go back and fix it. Okay, so we have our page here with Austin Powers again. I'm going to order, we'll say order 4 of these, and then I'm going to continue shopping. Let me see, I want a Martian. I would like that's a scary looking thing, isn't it? Just want one of those, $70 costume, so try to save some money, right? Checkout. Okay, well, this is a problem. Control validate. Control to validate of reb billing zip cannot be blank. Okay, well, there's an error. Let's go to live television's good, so let's go to the control to validate. There's no control to validate for this regular expression, so we need to set that up. So control to validate equals txt zip. Thought I'd already done that, but apparently not. We'll run it again. This time I'll just add the Martian and continue shopping. Add 2 Austin Powers. Those are expensive too. And then checkout. And good, it takes me to this page. If I try to check out now, I'm going to get a bunch of errors. You'll notice that it's not letting me, let's see, jpbot.oaklandcc.edu, jpbot.oaklandcc.edu. Alright, so the errors are quickly going away. 555, 555, 1212. This one needs to be in a particular form, so we'll say 0519 1983. That's my birthday. If you want to get me something in May, it will not affect your grade. All right, so 1313 Mockingbird Lane. We'll say Los Angeles, California 90101, and we'll leave that same as billing address. It's got all that information. Birth date's there. If I hit checkout, it'll take me here, and you'll notice it shows me the information for my birth date, shows me the information for the phone number, etc. So I can continue shopping, go to cart, check out. Again, if I put an invalid phone number here, it'll know. Immediately tells me it's the wrong format. And if I put an invalid birth date format in here, it'll tell me, hey, it needs to be in that form. So it's good. We've used regular expressions to do the test. Everything seems to be functioning really well. This is starting to look a little bit professional here. So you are very quickly learning the art of ASP and general web application development. If you haven't already taken the 2434, which is with typically taught by Professor Schanenberger. It's the web application development with PHP and Java. If you've never taken that before, then a lot of this is very new to you. But you'll notice there's actually a lot of some advantages to using the Visual Studio environment if you don't mind using Windows technologies. But you may end up in a job where you have to know one or the other or both. So it's good to have skill and information with both. All right. So I'm going to hit yes there. I'm going to close it. And if you have any questions, please feel free to email me, as always. I will upload this as soon as possible. And again, looking at the syllabus, next week is the midwinter break. So I would tell you not to come to class, but you don't come to class anyway, so you should be good. When you get back, we'll get the programming assignment, and also I should probably will do some sort of material for the midterm. I may or may not go over it in a video. I may just post a review sheet of some sort, and then we'll go over Chapter 8 and talk about Programming Project 2. They're called Programming Project, but Programming and Design Project. So if you have any questions, please feel free to email me. Thanks, and have a great week.